Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode, which is part one of a two-part series on rebooting health. In part one, we will essentially talk about exercise and how important that is for overall health. And in part two, we will talk about diet, sleep, supplementation, and all the other factors that round out the whole aspect of health. This is a topic that's close to our hearts, and Subbu and I spent a lot of time talking about this, and so we figured we'll bring it to the podcast. Now, we realize we're not really experts in this field. And so, what we try to offer is our own unique perspective of what it took for us to get started on the journey of health and exercise. And essentially, we identify that for ourselves, consistency is the most fundamental problem. And we assume a lot of people around the world would be facing the same issues. So we talk about that and we provide tools that we have experimented with ourselves to become more consistent with exercise. One of these tools we will talk about is the 21-day challenge framework. That has really worked out well. And we'll talk more about that during the course of this episode. What we hope to do is cut through the noise on exercise and nutrition and all the stuff that's out there on social media and describe on this podcast episode as to what has exactly worked for us. Another focus of this episode is to identify what the major levers that we can pull to optimize our health and focus on majoring in those majors and make sure we don't major in our minors to get the best use of time that we can use to improve our own health and fitness. So, without further ado, we hope you enjoy this episode.
Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of the Half Life Show. I'm Subbu, here with Vikram. So Vikram, what are we going to talk about today?
I have no idea. It's been like half a year has gone by before I even figured out what to say on this podcast.
That's right. We did get a pretty good start of the year. We banged out like 2 episodes in 2 weeks. And, I won't lie, I kind of expected it to fizzle out very soon after that because both of us got busy and what happened to our podcasting is what people say happens with the gymming, right? They start a new membership, start the gymming after Jan and then Feb, and then it dwindles.
So we made an episode, which I checked it out actually. It was on Jan 28th. It was called Dead in 2000 Weeks. So basically, what we discussed is how we are basically alive for 4,000 weeks based on that Oliver Burkeman book we both read, and how we kind of already used up half of it. Now we're left with 2,000 weeks, and now we wasted another 25 weeks not doing a podcast. So here we are in the beginning of July as we're recording this. Hopefully this gets out there quickly. But also the other thing is, as we get older, right? One of the most important things we have to look forward to is, I don't know if we look forward to it, but what's going to exactly happen is our health is going to decline. So unless we do something about it by signing up for that gym membership and actually sticking to it, if we do what we did with the podcast, it's not going to work out well.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of hyperbole at this point, I guess, but consistency is the key, right? And, when we decided to record this episode, I kind of felt a little lost because even though we have recorded a bunch of episodes last year and we found our groove, taking this break for a few months, but we didn't exercise this podcast muscle and it kind of withered away. And I was telling you that I don't know how this episode is going to come out. It feels like I need another icebreaker, and I may not feel as relaxed, as I did in the previous episodes. So there's this problem. There's this problem with consistency. I think all of us struggle with it in different aspects of our life. And one of the places where we talk a lot about consistency is just in health and working out, and how difficult that is.
Yeah. So actually, you are the one who told me this like 5 years ago. You're like, you're trying to like have a career here and you're saving up all this money and you're trying to like invest it early so that you can get the benefits of compounding and all of that stuff. But if you don't do the same thing with health and start early on this thing, there is absolutely no use. I don't know if you remember that you actually told me
Yeah,
that like 5 years ago.
right.
And so like that is like the biggest thing that has stuck in my mind. So I have to, invest early and do whatever is needed, because our bodies start to decline even in our early 30s. And if we are like and approaching 40s, it's definitely on the decline. And
Yeah,
after 40, muscle mass and all that starts to wither away as well. So
right.
my personal journey has started like really late. A lot of people have been into sports when they were younger and all of that stuff. Even for somebody like me who has like literally done no athletic activity, I never played any sport. The whole journey was for me is I started pretty much only in 2020. That's when I pretty much got onto something that resembled a consistent exercise program. And I've been at it for about 2 3 years now, and it's made a world of difference. And I was like, I wasted all my 20s where I had like the capacity to do really well in physical activity, but I just were like wild the whole thing away, right? So now I'm like, oh my god, what have I done? But however, better late than never. So do
Hmm.
it, even if, whatever age it is. I mean, we see people online talk about this too. Even if you're 65, it's better to start now than not start at 65. So
Right.
whatever age it is, it's always better to start. The other thing is that what I always ask myself, what is it that kept me from getting into this whole thing? I asked you like basically, hey, help me out here, what can I do? And you gave me a bunch of things to try out and do. It was amazing how I couldn't do any of them. I mean, you prescribed them to me thinking it's probably going to be easy for him to start off with, but it was really bad. I couldn't do any of them. The second thing that really held me back, I think, is the overwhelm of information that is there on this subject. There are so many different kinds of workouts, like even in just weightlifting, there's so much stuff. Then there's something like CrossFit. Then there's something called Olympic weightlifting. And I mean, there are overlaps in all these things, I understand. But then there's like all these people who tell you you should be running, you should be doing cardio, and there's like these high intensity exercises. So it's just so much stuff out there. And then you have all these people on Instagram and Facebook and all these, fitness gurus telling you that you have to follow this one amazing recipe that'll help you lose all the fat, or you try this one diet, or you try this one exercise is all you will need to grow abs, that kind of stuff. It's just then it's very hard to tune out the noise, so
Hmm.
that's what kept me from doing it all this time. And I think now it's come to a point where I can actually get this done. And in this episode, I think our goal is to just talk about what our own fitness journeys are, what we have figured out, and hopefully it helps somebody, especially if there's somebody like me who's never done anything before, or if there's somebody like you who's done some stuff before but thinks they can still get something out of it from our ideas. That'll be nice.
Yeah. So, and I think it's important to mention that, neither of us are experts. We are both trying to find our groove in our own way. And also, this whole health thing, it has its seasons even with us. So, for kind of, when November and December rolls around and the holidays roll around, we fall off the bandwagon. And I think the main advantage that I see that we have now that we've done it for a few years, even though we're not experts, is that when we fall off the bandwagon, we have the necessary tools to pick ourselves back up again. I think that is really the big achievement here. But from a health point of view specifically, we both have a long way to go. We still have a lot of work to put in. Anyway, so okay, with that caveat aside, this conversation also sparked from this blog article that you sent me. It's a Substack called Bowtie Docs. We link it. The premise of this article is don't major in the minors, major in the majors, right? Okay. So before I get into what that means, I want to mention a couple of things. What has helped us? What has helped me in this journey to maintain good health, right? Especially as we have gotten older, is the first thing is finding out a way to be consistent. The second aspect of it is majoring in the majors and not majoring in the minors. That is basically, we only have so much time, given our 9 to 5 job and taking care of family and so on. So we have to make sure that we're not wasting our time optimizing for things that has poor return. We can only choose a few things to optimize and do well when it comes to health. and we got to make sure that we choose the right 2 or 3 things. That's what majoring in the majors really means. So okay, let's talk about consistency and then majoring in the majors, right? So with consistency, both of us have such different personalities. I've kind of been envious about how easy it is for you to be consistent, in the sense that all of a sudden one weekend you tell me, hey, from tomorrow I'm going to start sleeping at 9:30 today and waking up at 4:45 from tomorrow, and then you just do it the next day, and you consistently do it month after month. I mean, it is just, you just think about it, you decide, and you're able to be consistent. But I think most people are in the boat that I am. Consistency is my biggest enemy. I have to, like, sit myself down, and if I tell myself, hey, I'm going to start eating right tomorrow, it takes me a few weeks before I catch my groove and actually start eating healthy. I have to feel guilty for a few weeks, and then I'll on for a couple of days I'll eat healthy, and the third day I go out and I pat myself on the back and then binge eat something else, and then I fall off the bandwagon, and then I have to pick myself up again. So over the last 7-8 years, I think I have found a recipe that helps me become consistent once I fall off the bandwagon. That's really important. Like, in the sense, no one with any amount of willpower is going to be consistent forever. You're always going to have, maybe due to injuries, some events in the family, this and that. Work is probably busy for a period of time, and where you're not working out and so on. So the main thing that happened is I figured out a recipe for myself to become consistent. And for me, the recipe is, it has to be some sort of a 21-day challenge. These 30-day challenges somehow tire me out. 14 or 15-day challenges aren't good enough to make a habit stick. And I feel that, like, a 3-week, a 3-week challenge helps me become consistent with a habit that I'm trying to introduce into my life. So, for example, if I tell myself that, hey, I want to start walking, I kind of feel like I've gained a bit of weight, and at this point, there are countless number of YouTube videos and Instagram posts that say that, hey, the best way to lose weight is actually, get your 7,000 or 10,000 steps a day or whatever it is, right? Working out and eating right was kind of part of my plan, but then walking really wasn't in my program. And the only way I can bring that habit in is if I give myself like a 21-day challenge. And for those 21 days, I basically have pre-decided that, okay, you know what, my brain is going to give me excuses. Going to give me a million excuses when I wake up in the morning that, today I don't feel like it. Maybe we can skip the walk today and so on. But the whole point is to remind yourself this is just a 3-week program, and I need to, I can't fail. If you are in a boat where you're trying to get your health together and exercise and so on, or eat healthy, one hack essentially is giving yourself a 2-week or a 3-week challenge. And
what do you do after your 3-week challenge ends? Do you restart another 3-week challenge?
I'm glad you asked the question. So what happens? So, like I said, this is my recipe, right? I mean, it may not work for it may not work for someone else as well as it works for me, but I think it's worth a try. What happens in those 3 weeks is the act of doing that habit. The benefits of that habit start showing up, and that gives you a high. So at the end of 3 weeks, I feel like, oh my God, I can't go without walking every day. It becomes an integral part of my daily life. Or, if I may cut it down after the 21-day challenge, I may integrate it into my life a little better. I may say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to do 7 days a week anymore. I'm going to do this only on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It's much easier for me to take my foot off the gas, bring that walking activity 3 days a week, and then actually practice it. And in my experience, the reason why it is 3 to 4 weeks is because it takes you that long for your body to start feeling that, I see the benefits and I can't do without it. And it kind of gives you a high.
So the thing that I adopt, my strategies for doing something like this, I think I have 2 tricks that keep me consistent in stuff that I do. Especially stuff I care about, like off late, it's been exercise. So one is, I'd never ask myself whether I feel like doing it or not. The question doesn't exist. What you feel like doing or you don't feel, feelings has nothing to do with it. You're going to do it. It's a robotic activity. You get up, you brush your teeth. It's exactly like that. You don't ask yourself how you're feeling. Okay, that being said, that'll get you into the gym or your walk or whatever it is that you want to do. That once you are there, then you can ask yourself, how exactly am I feeling today? Do I want to walk only 1000 steps because I didn't sleep a wink last night? That's fine. If you want to, walk 10,000 steps, 15,000 because you're feeling great, you can always scale your workout or your exercise intensity by a factor depending on how you feel. But the fact is that you have already shown up there. The showing up part has no feeling to it. But it's always good to ask yourself how you're feeling, because you don't want to overdo exercise either, because you can actually hurt yourself doing that. So that's the other thing. One more thing I think that actually helps is you set aside a time in your day you're going to do this. You're just going to tell yourself, look, I'm going to go do this from 2 to 3. That's it. Design your calendar around that and make sure you have time for it. Because if you don't tell yourself exactly when you're going to do something like this, it is very open ended, and then you keep delaying it till the end of the day, and then you're like, you know what, I'll just do it tomorrow. So you tell yourself that this is the time I'm going to do it, and you show up there whether you feel like it or you don't, and then you do something and get out. And I think this can, coupled with your 21-day challenge, can give some tools to actually stay consistent in whatever health regimen one can take up.
One of the problems with some of these advice that you see from popular people like, I don't know, Lex Friedman or Jocko Willink or, these Navy SEALs is, hey, just man up or woman up and, be, or David Goggins, one of your favorite buddies, he just says, whatever, go hard and, just, do a strong mind equal to strong body or whatever. My biggest problem with all of that blanket of advice is that, my willpower, I can't depend upon my willpower. I mean, somehow my willpower is not strong as theirs or whatever it is, but I can't force an activity or I can't bring in a good habit or change my habit with sheer willpower. It is just, it just doesn't happen. My willpower kind of varies, like the stock market, I guess. In the morning, it probably is optimistic. By the end of the day, it's crashing, right? So
the very fact that you mentioned that, I read it in, what book was this? I can't recollect. But anyway, I read that willpower is a finite resource that gets depleted. So there's only this much willpower that you wake up with in any given morning or a week or a month. I don't know how you want to look at it. You can use it up on stuff and it's gone. So if you use up all your willpower to do this really challenging work thing, and you have to get this deadline being met, you used it up. You don't have any willpower left for exercise now. Okay.
Right.
So this strong arming yourself into doing exercise, like David Goggins says, the extreme approach, it works for a little bit of time. I would say it works for maybe a week. And then for me, it doesn't. After that, it's just like, I maybe I don't have the mental fortitude, but it doesn't stick.
Yeah. And that's why the whole 21-day challenge is designed for that specific purpose. I found that the 3 weeks is the limit to which I can force my willpower. So I'm basically telling myself up ahead that, hey, these are 3 weeks, and I kind of deplete my willpower at the end of it. That's why I don't do like 30-day challenges, somehow don't work, because I lose interest after 21 days. But the 21 days is good enough. It's good enough for a habit, for me to figure out, okay, is this going to, like, for example, if I do a juice diet for 21 days, right? For example, I mean, I did it. I did much longer juice diets and stuff like that, but it just didn't stick. And at that point, I have to move on and try to figure out a different plan. So that way, the 21 days is good for you to get a feel of it, and also to for it to become a natural part of your plan. But on willpower, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. There's this chap called Dr. Mark Hyman. He's pretty popular doctor on Instagram and YouTube and podcasts and things like that. In the last few years, some of his posts around this willpower, even for people who are overweight, he says, look, telling someone, say in your family or your friend, trying to tell them, hey, you know what, I think you need to get healthy, and telling them that, can you please stop eating this? Or that's just bad advice. Because what he says, that if you take obesity, which is like a big issue in across the world, and especially in US, you can't change your eating habits with pure willpower. You can't wake up one day and decide that I'm going to start eating healthy. A lot of times these things happen because of a certain chemical balance in your body. Maybe you've just been eating processed foods, and that plays a role in your brain chemistry, and you are more vulnerable to craving food, overeating, and eating chocolates and these dense calories which anyway don't fill you. So there is an aspect of brain chemistry also involved. So even as much you can use all the willpower in the world, but if the chemical composition of your body at the time is not proper, you need a reboot of a different kind. And the part of the challenge is figuring out what type of you need to try out a few different types of reboot. And that what that reboot is could be going and joining a CrossFit gym and finding a community where people understand you and are willing to help you. That could be one kind of reboot. Another kind of reboot may be one of these 6-month meal plans which you can sign up and they just tell you, hey, we're going to send you the food and you just eat this kind of thing. That may be one kind of reboot. Or maybe you try a few sports, like if you're overweight and you think that, hey, you know what, I used to swim as a kid, I haven't swam in 10 years, maybe I'll go try it out. And then you get addicted to swimming. And it is that actually reboots your health, not willpower.
Okay, that's interesting. Now that we have this 21-day framework and a few things to get the consistency part going, let's kind of talk through, see what we can fill in those 21 days. Like if somebody is thinking, hey, that sounds like a fun way to do a challenge, what should we do to fill these 21 days, and how should I structure any kind of exercise program? I think we have to keep in mind that some people who are listening may not have ever exercised, or like me, or have different goals. Like some people might want to lose weight, some people might want to put on muscle, some people might just want to develop more aerobic performance. There are different ways to look at this, right? The first thing we can address is the most minimum form of exercise one can get into doing is walking. So if it comes to walking and a 21-day challenge, how would you structure it?
When I try to incorporate walking into my weekly program, I started with 30 minutes. So a lot of these articles and posts say that, hey, you try to get about 60 minutes of walking or 45 minutes of walking. But step number one was realistically sitting and figuring out what part of my day I can squeeze in a walk and how much time do I realistically have. The place I arrived at was I usually leave home at around 8:30 in the morning to drop my kid off to daycare or school. And soon after I drop him off, I have this window from 8:45 to 9:15 where I can squeeze in a half an hour walk before I have to be at my desk and working at 9:30 in the morning. I would have liked to have more than 30 minutes. 30 minutes is really not much, but then I decided that that's all I get. So for the whole 21 days, I committed that I'm going to try my best not to, to be on time with the kid drop off and get that 30 minutes of walking in. Initially, the 30 minutes of walking was, I tried to work up a sweat and try to walk briskly and so on. But then eventually I kind of found a groove, saying, hey, you know what, I just want to show up and I want to walk on this trail. So luckily we live in California, and this was the month of Jan or Feb, or around Feb. And usually it's either overcast or it's pretty pleasant weather in the morning. And so it's nice to be out. So if you live in a place where it is too cold, depending upon, or too cold, too hot, depending upon the time of the year, then you need to find an alternative plan. I am really not a big fan of walking on the treadmill. That's one sure shot way to discourage me from walking. So for me, it had to be walking outside, so I get some benefit of being outdoors, and it had to happen early in the morning, and the weather was cooperative also.
So when it comes to walking alone, that's like the easiest way for people to start, right? But you kind of touched on the point that you try to walk briskly. Does it matter at all whether you walk at, you're not going to walk too slow, obviously, like considering a normal pace versus an exercise pace, you know what I mean?
Right.
Where you're trying to purposely push it. Does it matter at all? Or for a 21-day challenge, would you just pick a normal walking speed for somebody who's not exercised before?
Yeah, it is I would say that the only requirement is getting a good pair of shoes. That's really, and it's kind of understated how important that is. Even I've told you, I took a look at your shoe and I told you, I think that needs to go, and you need to get that getting a good pair of shoes, and it can be an exciting thing, right? I mean, getting a new pair of good shoes, which are which have enough of toe room or whatever it is. It's also like a happy occasion. You say, okay, I'm going to get these shoes, and this is going to and I'm going to put this to good use by starting my 21-day challenge. And as far as the pace of walking is concerned, it really doesn't matter, because just to give you an idea of what that 21-day challenge was more than a year ago, and right now what I still walk 3 times a week, and I'm sorry, I walk 2 days a week. Tuesdays and Thursdays at my time, I walk for an hour, and I walk with a 30-pound rucksack. And I usually and that's the kind of walk I've come to enjoy, and I get a good work out of it. So even though I started with just 30 minutes of walking a year and a half ago, it has evolved into a proper form of exercise now.
So there is a progression. You're saying there's a progression. So
yeah.
Even if you want to just start walking and that's all your body allows you to do that. Don't even worry about walking fast or walking with weights like you do. There's no need to do any of that. Just walk. I think that's the first recommendation. And another really good thing I came across is why walking is such a good form of exercise is that it allows you to lose fat without losing muscle. It's a great form of cardio. Actually, it is minimal injuries compared to running because running has its impacts on the joints and stuff like that. But walking gives you a really good cardio session. It's not obvious to think that walking can be cardio, but it really is, and it does it without the loss of muscle mass.
Another reason why walking is particularly it's become like a big favorite amongst fitness influencers now is any other form of exercise, if it is running or jogging or even light weights, or even if you go and do some sort of an elliptical, they make you hungry. Walking is particularly useful in losing weight because you don't feel hungry at the end of it, and you don't crave to come back and you kind of gorge food or whatever it is. So, for example, you can run 3 miles, and if you run 3 miles, you're probably losing only a few hundred calories. If that's really, I mean, people think that you're losing like 1,000 calories, but it's not. It's just a couple of hundred calories is what 3 miles of running does. But the act of running 3 miles and coming back is so exhausting that you drink a Gatorade, and you drink, eat a whole bunch of carbs and so on, and then you're defeated the purpose of that exercise. But walking does not do that to you. You can finish a lot of people, even at work, they love going for afternoon walk soon after lunch. And the reason is, they go take the 30-minute walk because it's relaxing, it's rejuvenating, and then you can come back, sit down, and you don't get the afternoon carb crash, and you can continue working, right? And so it's doing something. It's doing something beneficial.
Absolutely. So that's why I think walking should never be discounted as a form of exercise. It's easy to do, and it's for everybody, really, right? One other thing that I see sometimes I talk to friends about this because I have a few friends who exercise too, and since I took up all this weightlifting and stuff, they've quite supportive and also curious as to why I am doing that, and as opposed to swimming or running, or there's so many, or biking. There's so many activities one can do, right? I think weightlifting or resistance training is a completely necessary part of a workout program that is different from cardio. You can have cardio of any form that you want, but you have to have resistance training too.
Yeah.
And there are really some good reasons for this. I think one is the loss of muscle mass as you age. There is a number. We lose a certain percentage of our body muscle every year after the age of, say, 40 or something like that. And it can be calculated by the end of your life what your muscle mass will end up being. So you don't want to lose muscle because that is pretty much what drives you and moves you around. So if you want to have like good mobility, and also it regulates a lot of stuff that happens in your body, because we are not really medical experts. I mean, I don't think any of us can go into the details, but there are great resources about out there. One being this book by Peter Attia that I just read called Outlive. He has a really good section on exercise. So I highly recommend that. And maybe we'll talk about that book in a future podcast. It's really worth its own episode, or many actually, because it's such a wealth of information. We'll leave a link in the description. That's why I think resistance training is important, because it also builds bone density, which is another thing that drops as you age. But in any case, I think for many more reasons that are there, I think weightlifting and resistance training has to be done at least 3 times a week for about 45 minutes at least, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that's a reasonable recommendation?
That's very reasonable, yeah.
And there is an upper limit too. You don't want to do it every day of the week, because you have to recover from resistance training. And if you don't do that, you will hurt yourself in other ways. So anywhere between, I think, 3 to 5 is about as much as one can do. This is something that I have incorporated, and I do anywhere between 3 to 4. I've done 5 workouts in a week, but what ends up happening is I tend to not recover as fast. My joints start to hurt. Secondly, I don't have time to do anything else, because it's not always about resistance training. You need to spend time in doing this low grade cardio, or what is known in popular terminology these days as zone 2 heart rate. So that is very important to spend time in. And walking, I think, qualifies as zone 2 cardio training. And the recommendation for that kind of cardio training is also 3 to 4 hours a week. So if you have 3 to 4 hours a week of zone 2 cardio, and then you have 3 to 4 hours you need to have weightlifting or resistance training, you've already like signed up for more than an hour a day for 7 days a week, which is a lot for most people to do. It's really hard to keep up that consistency.
It's not practical.
However you
it's not
look
practical.
at it. It's not practical. I mean, it's ideal, but it's not doable by everybody in all lifestyles.
Yeah.
So I think that could be another form of 21-day challenge for anybody who's like, would like to go and start with resistance training. Maybe 3 days a week is a great place to start.
Yeah, and I would say even 2 days for that matter. Even 2 days of walking and 2 days of weight training. That's a good place to start.
Now, when you say like, this is what confused me, okay, this is the hardest thing that I faced when I started resistance training. And that is, okay, you say resistance training, but now what am I supposed to do? I go into a gym and what do I do? Lift a dumbbell, put it down? Right. I mean, what exactly is resistance training?
Yeah.
So how would you suggest someone? I mean, you helped me out here, but I think you can help more people by explaining, how one should approach this at all.
Yeah. See, this is such a hard problem. And I think this is a piece that is lost when it comes to the messaging from fitness influencers and all of these folks on YouTube and Instagram. Is for a person who wants to work out, so you're being bombarded. It's very easy to click follow on YouTube and Instagram and start getting bombarded with these messages, these inspirational messages every day, right? But it is really hard for someone who either hasn't done it in a while or who has never done any form of strength training. Like something like walking, I think is easy advice to give and easy advice to follow, right? So that's a clear win. But this weight training, it really is very hard. In my friend circle and in my own case, really how I ended up in this path is a friend got me into it. I was recovering from a running injury because I spent all of my 20s, running. I was in running groups. I used to run marathons and half marathons and all of that. That form of working out kept me fit. But one of the reasons running was my only form of exercise was because when in my early 20s, when I moved to the Bay Area, I joined a running group, a bunch of people at work. And every Tuesdays and Thursdays, we used to go and run for 2 or 3 miles. And then it kind of became, I joined this group of friends, and then that's how I got into it, right? If not for that, I wouldn't have been running. So, but then the reason why I continued to only run is because that's all I knew how to do. I hadn't really gone to a gym and worked out before. But at the end of by my early 30s, I had gotten really good at running. I was doing marathons. I was running 26 miles, but then the problem is that I'd gotten good at running, but my parts of my body were breaking down. My knees were kind of giving up because I wasn't. If you want to have longevity as a runner, then you need to be also go into the gym and strengthen your hamstrings and glutes and back, and doing all these accessory work. And I wasn't doing any of that because I didn't know what all that was. So in my early 30s, I ran the San Francisco Marathon. It was 26 miles, 40 kilometers, and it's particularly a tough marathon. I wasn't adequately trained for it, and I just went and ran it anyway because I was overconfident, and I came away with I did well in the marathon itself, but I couldn't get off the bed for the next week. And then my knees were creaking. I had to go to the doctor, and there was so much inflammation in my legs that the doctor said, "Look, let's go get a scan." And he took a bunch of MRI scans, and then he said, "You've lost a lot of your cartilage or whatever it is." I had like a meniscus tear and all of those things, right? So it basically, I had to stop running because I didn't have an option. At that point, after some physical therapy, I decided, okay, I can't go out for a run. I'm used to doing some form of exercise, so let me just go to the company gym. And I went there and I was walking on the treadmill because there are all these weights. It was a good gym that my company had, but I didn't know what to do with all of the stuff. I was just walking on the stupid treadmill. And luckily, it is just luck. It is just my luck, right? This is probably the luckiest I've gotten in some ways, I guess, is a new employee joined my team. And he came and told, "Hey, Subbu, what are you doing there?" I said, "I'm just walking because, I can't run because my knees have given up." He says, "Oh, why don't you just join me and do some weights?" And this guy's buff. He has nice, he's got tattoos, he's got muscles. And I knew nothing about CrossFit. This is sometime around 2015, I want to say, about 8 years ago. And he got me down this path of CrossFit. And he said, and he was such a believer of passing down that he said, hey, somebody taught him all of this stuff and got him into the gym, and he feels good about himself. And he used to show up on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for my sake and stand there and tell me what to do.
That's awesome.
Can you imagine that? He used to come in, like, how lucky am I, right? So 1 hour during lunch break, he said, just show up here. I'll tell you what to do. We'll do a few things together. And then, and he did this for a few months, about 3-4 months. And that was good enough for me to get completely addicted to CrossFit style of working out. It's high intensity training. So I could run 26 miles, but I couldn't do one single pull up because my lats and shoulders are not developed at all. I had like skinny arms. I had completely skinny hands. So he taught me how to get my first pull up, then taught me how to do squats and deadlifts and all of that. Now, the reason I'm telling you the story is that this is not the case only with me. For a whole bunch of us at work who had never lifted any weight before, he was the person. This guy called Johnny was our inspiration. He is the guy who got all of us into it, and most of us continue to work out to this day. And I realized that, and then I had reached a point where I didn't need his day-to-day support anymore, and I could walk into the gym, and based on the stuff that he's put me through, I could write out a workout for myself and then go do it. I was keen. I was excited. If I go a week without training because of travel, then I'm craving to come back and get into the gym. Now, the point is, that is the place that everyone needs to get. We have to get, and even with you, like, it took us, at one point I told you, look, you've got to start doing weights. Let's start trying stuff, right? I made you spend $1,000 and get a rower. That was kind of catching dust for a while. I made you get kettlebells. That also didn't work. So we had to try multiple things to figure out what would end up working. And now I can confidently, you yourself say that if you go a week without doing some form of weight training, it just feels completely wrong. Your body kind of revolts. Your mood is bad. You're cranky. Even the people around you, like, look, why don't you take an hour and go work out? I think you're a better person if you work out, right? And so that's what, and so you have reached a point where I think is like the holy grail, the point where your body has auto-regulated. It has some sort of an auto-regulation that if you go too far, you will not go too long without workout. And that is the point that most people are. So now, the best way is if you have some sort of a friend or even some sort of an acquaintance, right? It is best to reach out for help from the person. It may be very hard, it may feel awkward, but if I'm pretty sure that if it is a person who exercises regularly, not talking about someone who is bulked up and has ripped and has six pack. If you know someone in your circle who has a habit of going to 3 times to the gym or whatever it is, the best form is reaching out to them and say, hey, my health is really bad. My cholesterol numbers or whatever is really bad. My doctor has put me on statins or whatever it is. Can you help me? Right? I mean, that's the first place I would start. Just joining someone. The rate of success is nearly 100%. If you can find a friend that you can join,
Yeah.
and just do what they're doing, and say, hey, I'll just, and that is, it's probably the best recipe. The second best recipe is finding some form of trainer. Obviously, this requires money. It's not for everyone, but now there is a lot. There are equal number of people who have bad things to say about CrossFit. It's kind of divisive. Okay, there are equal number of people who love CrossFit and who say that, you know what, CrossFit is the devil, right? But based on, I may be a little bit biased here, but I think that if you can afford it, join a CrossFit gym close to you. And I think CrossFit has gyms there are CrossFit affiliated gyms all over the world at this point. And the way CrossFit gyms work is there are 1 hour classes. So it's group class. So it's a 1 hour class, and it's all through the day. It starts at 5 o'clock in the morning, at noon and evening. Most of these places have, and you pick a time when what works for you. And the 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 thing that CrossFit has done very well is there's something called as L1 certification, where a coach needs to take a 1 or 2 day certification and coaching class from CrossFit, and they are all generally good coaches. They're taught how to move, and they can kind of communicate it to you and things like that. And over the years, that L1 training they've really perfected it. So CrossFit coaches, generally speaking, are pretty good, at least for the beginner. And the best thing is you got to show up to a class for an hour. It is a group class. Everyone, the camaraderie there is amazing, and you will get addicted. And the biggest problem with CrossFit is that, you know, once you get addicted, you push yourself and you get into injuries. And so we can talk about those problems another time, but at least the best way to get started. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to throw one more thing. You have a lot of these gyms in US, like these 24, they're called Globo gyms, like 24-hour fitness and city sports and so on, right? This is just a room full of machines, and you can just pay a $35 or a $50 per month membership, and then you show up and there is no help really, right? I think that's the worst way to get into working on. Don't do that. Now, when you join a gym, they will try to sell you like a 6-class package with a trainer for $300. Even that really doesn't help, because 6 classes and $300, it's just too little time. You need support for a lot longer. If a trainer comes for 6 1-hour sessions and tells you how to use some equipment, it's not good enough. You're going to stop after that. So you need something longer. So instead of a Globo gym, so if that's CrossFit is usually it's kind of expensive. Those things are a bit expensive. If that is too bad, then I haven't tried these out, but there are a lot of these Orange Theory Fitness. There are other kind of places which have the same concept of a 1-hour class. Go and do some sort of a 1-hour kick. It could be a 1-hour kickboxing. It could be a 1-hour, I don't know, like a rowing or a cycling, or what is that place in which started at in New York, that spinning class? I forget what it's called.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
We'll put it in the link if you remember later.
Anyway, so there was this very popular spinning thing. It became like a big movement kind of thing. I mean, or it could be anyway. So the thing is that Soul Cycle, I think, it's called Soul Cycle.
Okay.
So there are many such things. So find a class, and just it may be a bit expensive initially, but it is the best investment that you can make for your health. So I think, so find a friend, number one. If that doesn't work, the second is find a class-based workout.
You know, the one that actually ended up working for me was this app you recommended called Fitbod. We'll leave a link in the description too of that one. So what it is basically an app, which is another way of just getting it done. So what I like about Fitbod as an app on my phone is that I open up the phone and it tells me what exercises I have to do along with the video of how it has to be done. And all I have to do is follow whatever video is happening on the phone and just do that and leave. So there's no thought process here. There's nothing that I have to go inside the gym and start thinking, what am I supposed to do now? There's nothing. You just show up, get it done. And it's very inexpensive. At least the time I had it was like $5 or $6 a month, compared to a trainer that is like an order of magnitude less expensive, right? Than a trainer would cost. I mean, a trainer costs, I think, in the range of $60 to $80 a session. or something
Yeah.
like that,
Hmm.
isn't it? So
Yes.
$6 a month is like it's worth a shot. I mean, you can get like discount packs and stuff for like $70 a year if you find it on sale too. And that was really helpful. I did Fitbod for almost a whole year, I would say. It keeps increasing the resistance as you get better at it. So it kind of keeps track of what you're doing, and it keeps increasing the difficulty level, and it works really nicely. I think it covers. You gave a few ways of you can set up what kind of exercises you want to do. You can even change it. Change you try something you don't like the setting, you change to something else, and see which exercises are doable by you. And one other hesitation I had was, and I think this is true with a lot of beginners, is that I'm going to go into the gym. I'm going to start lifting this like 5 or 10 pound dumbbell, which is like light, very light, right? And everybody's going to laugh at me. And that has never happened to me. Like to this day, the embarrassment of like lifting light weights or one worrying about to date, nobody. I mean, I've worked out in several places. From all that I have even read online about this stuff, nobody ever makes fun of you. I mean, if they do, they are going to be everywhere. I mean, there are people who
Hmm.
probably make fun of you at a grocery store. That doesn't mean you don't go to a grocery store. But most
Right.
people, I think, are supportive, and you can ask them for help. And most people are willing to help too. So if you don't have the buddy system going or you can't sign up for a class, this app method, along with, hey, help me out, can you tell me if I'm doing this right, is a great way of getting started too.
Yeah, so I'll just add one thing to that. So if you can't go to a class based exercise shop and your only option is to get like go to a Globo gym, then the best supplement I think is the Fitbod app. So that's worth a shot. So basically, instead of going to this gym and trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? Do I just get on the elliptical? Then this $7 per month app will basically tell you can open up the app and it'll tell you what to do that day, and that's the best way to follow. The reason why I recommended Fitbod to you is, and the reason I was sure that it would work very well for you is because, as I was telling earlier, knowing you, if I tell you that, hey, do this, you have no problem. You just go out and do it. This consistency is never been a problem for you. Or if I tell you that, hey, do this on the next 5 days, somehow you just go do it. You do exactly that. You follow it and you just go and knock it out for the next 5 days, right? But you don't look for motivation, this or that, to do that. So the thing with Fitbod is it is up to you to show up. That's the
Correct.
problem. I mean, like
Yeah.
it typically the reason why CrossFit and class based like Soul Cycle and things like that, or even say this Peloton was such a phenomenon because it gets you on the bike because you are either with friends or you're doing some sort of a race.
Yeah.
With like a group, it's like a network kind of a gaming thing. It's a kind of gamification of it. That's the reason why Peloton kind of took off so much.
Yeah.
So you're interacting with other humans. But the problem with Fitbod and a gym membership is that it is up to you to show up and do it.
Yeah, I think it's a good. I mean, I have friends who also told me, like, look, I need a community to do whatever I do,
Yeah,
any activity I do. I need a community. I'm that kind of a person. And I totally get that. I am really don't need that. I can
yeah, you
fly
don't care
solo.
about that.
so, so it's fine with me. So I think it's good to evaluate what kind of a person, mentality you have and go accordingly and try something out. So I think we've spent a lot of time on the exercise aspect. That's only because it is like super important. I think like that's the
Right.
single biggest thing we can do for ourselves. And for
Yeah.
anybody who has done zero exercise to doing even a little bit, people see a vast improvement in every body metric you can imagine, right?
Right. Right.
So after that, yeah, of course, it gets harder and harder to make any reasonable progress, as with anything. But from going from zero to some exercise gives a lot of benefits. So if that's
Hmm.
going to motivate somebody to do it, I think we should totally do that.
Yeah.
And people should try it out. The other major levers that we will get to, but on a lesser uh, extent for the interest of time, is probably diet, right?
Hmm.
And I would say sleep. Do you have any other big majors that people should major in?
Yeah. I think that, yeah. So the we'll the supplementation like supplements, what supplements to eat. It's definitely a minor if you consider, strength training, walking, and diet as the three, and sleep as the four big majors. There is definitely some value in talking about supplementation, but I think that we tend to focus. It is such a low-hanging fruit. People, including me, we tend to focus so much on getting supplementation right, like it's going to change everything, right? And it doesn't. I mean, like you have to. It maybe adds only 5% improvement. The remaining 95% comes from diet and exercise.
All right, that's about it for this episode on Rebooting Health Part 1. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you would like to listen to this episode or any of our previous episodes, you can find them all on our website, halflife.show. And you can always reach us on Instagram, where our handle is @halflife.show. See you on the next episode.